And with the conclusion of this episode of My Hero Academia, we have finished out season 7. Let's talk about if it was a satisfying conclusion or it left a little to be desired. Let's talk about it. All right, guys, we're here back with Rants, cover all things Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, anime, gaming, Star Wars, and more. This time, My Hero Academia, Season 7, Episode 21. And for me, this left a little bit to be desired. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below about how you felt the episode concluded or the season itself concluded overall. And for me, this felt kind of anticlimactic at best, as we still didn't have a truly definitive ending to a couple major battles that we just kind of left in an ongoing state. And for me, I'm one of those people that I would like to wrap up as many key pieces as we possibly can within the season itself. I understand from the manga standpoint why they wanted to keep this ongoing, and the fact that season 8 is going to be the definitive conclusion to the series, likely coming out mid or late 2025, maybe even 2026, that ultimately they wanted to keep a couple pieces on the burner to make sure everyone's interest was still peaked for the absolute conclusion of this series. And hey, it's fair. This series has been out for about 10 plus years now. By the time everything's over, it'll be more like 11 or 12 years, which is a very, very long time for a couple animes out there, unless you're One Piece, in which you'll be going long after I'm gone on this earth. Well, that's another conversation for another time. In this episode, we had the penultimate conclusion involving Toga and Ochaku, and it was one that we spent a lot of time addressing that ultimately felt personally we didn't really need to address as much or as solidly as we did. We spent more than half of the first part of the episode just discussing everything involving them that I thought they satisfyingly drew a conclusion on last episode. We start seeing like a little bit of the army of twices were finally starting to vanish, and looks like the army of twices were significantly closer to a lot of heroes than we ultimately thought. They were basically going to take out Ida, and that we already had a twice that had a knife, and that was basically going to take out Hawks, who was standing there with a sword, basically passing in and out of consciousness, trying to defend himself because he's quirkless and he's had a significant loss of blood, so he is just struggling in any and all uncertain terms at this moment in time due to overexerting himself in a situation where now that he's just, let's be honest, outclassed, he's quirkless. It's not no longer a world that's entirely fit for him to be one of the top 10 heroes. And then ultimately we had more things going on with Toga and Ochaku. Toga kind of assesses Ochaku and senses that she is losing too much blood, that she's ultimately within a lethal state of being able to pass on to the next life. She was stabbed and ultimately kept moving on far longer than she should have, basically allowing the wound to continue to open up, tear, and cause some significant damage to herself and her body. So then Toga does the most selfless thing I've seen her do. She basically grabs one of the tubes from her suit because her suit is built for blood transfusion. If there's going to be a character other than the doctor from Class 1A in order to go ahead and fix a wound like this, it's going to be her. So basically, she basically takes a sample of Uravity's blood, puts it in herself, and then starts a blood transfusion where she's going to link up the blood that is now within her, that is Uravity's, back directly into Uravity, which I gotta say is ingenious. It is very, very brilliant move on no uncertain terms. So she would have been like an amazing doctor in just about any other life for these kinds of blood transfusions if she didn't have the personality deficiencies that she ultimately has, where she was just an outcast of society and was looked upon and frowned upon in such a way. If she'd been loved and treated properly, she probably could have just been a blood transfusion doctor and just moved on with her life, and things would have been ultimately fine. But she decides to give up her life in order to save Uravity because she's like, look, all I wanted was for someone to love me, to take care of me, and to appreciate me, which I thought we covered fully in depth last episode, but I guess we needed to rehash now. So ultimately, she gives up her life in order to save Uravity's. They're both kind of laying there in this moment where they're just kind of like, thank you so much for being in my life. Thank you so much for caring about me. And then it looks like Toga basically passes on at this moment in time, while Uravity is just unconscious because she's just lost too much blood. And even this blood transfusion will save her. she's still passing in and out of consciousness just because she overexerted herself on her quirk to save so many people's lives, because she was basically holding up a couple thousand people with her quirk. And then we went into the meat and potatoes of this episode, which I thought was going to be the entirety of this episode. The fight involving All Might and All for One, I thought was going to be the main center point of this episode, where we get from start to finish them just duking it out to the penultimate conclusion. But due to the way the episode went, basically we see that All Might has this new suit he calls Hercules, which is some kind of like Iron Man-ish tech that syncs up to him and is some adaptive AI that is able to give him some kind of quirk, some kind of power set, be able to kind of use him as a shield. And he's basically able to go toe to toe with All for One for a period of time. And All Might is basically just out here stalling. He's doing everything he can to ensure that All for One isn't able to go make it to Shigaraki, because he fears that at some point those two will either team up against Deku, or that ultimately he will just usurp everything involving, Shigaraki's quirk power set and try and take him for himself, and then use that power set to then dominate Deku. Because if we had All for One powered up by everything that is evolving Shigaraki, I understand Deku's amazing, but that would be game, set, match for just about any hero at any moment in time. There's just too much of a brilliant factor as far as mindset, and then the quirk list is just too expansive, so it'd be the ultimate demise for our hero there. So All Might's out here stalling. He's throwing haymakers, he's throwing kicks, he's taunting. He's doing everything he can to ensure that All for One isn't going to be able to be in a position where he's able to at least hold ground or keep things steady overall. So it's a tough situation for a lot of people. It wasn't the ideal situation for a lot of people, but All Might is holding out as a symbol of hope. We got a couple flashbacks involving him basically begging the previous user of his quirk set to be like, hey, train me, hey, educate me, hey, let me know what's going on with this, let me go with this. And then she's finally like, look, what is it you want from me? What is it you think you're going to accomplish by talking to me? And he's like, I want to be able to have this power so that I can change the future of what's going on. And she's like, the future for what? Why in the world would you even bother changing it? What would you change it to? And he's like, hope. I just want to give people hope. I lost my parents and everything that's going on here. The world is going in a bad place. If the people have something to believe in and to have hope in, they'll continue to stay strong and they'll continue to do the right thing, which All Might eventually, became the symbol of hope that everyone believed in him and thought to be. So he lived up to his word in every single regard, and ultimately, got that training, in which he passed on to Deku, and Deku is now embodying that symbol of hope for everybody moving forward. I think for me personally, this episode was great from animation quality. I just don't like inconclusive finales. I like all my pieces tidied up nice within the episode, so that the seasons are compacted and they don't bleed into each other, so you can kind of forget like what's happening going on. With Game of Thrones did the same thing, where they had, and hey, spoilers if you never made it to season 6, Jon Snow was murdered, and then he came back within the very first episode of the next season. I don't prefer those styles of cliffhangers, but again, this anime deserves it. It's been going on for 10 years. What do you guys think? What was your favorite moment from this season? Any part of the episode breakdowns that you've checked out from episode 1 through episode 21 of this season that you thoroughly enjoyed? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that lovely red subscribe button. We have Supermarket Simulator dropping Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time or 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As well as we have Dandadan, we have Blue Lock Season 2, we have Mecha Ude, we have Dragon Ball Daima, we have Agatha all along. You get the picture. We cover a lot of great content. Hope to see you enjoying it. Have a great night, folks.